Don't tell a reporter you have all the time in the world, man, because I'll eat that up, or I'll try to. I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged, the podcast edition of that. And today I'm joined by the new Maricopa County Chairman of the board, Thomas Galvin. Thank you very much for stopping by here, man. I mean, made a lot of headlines this past week when you were named the new chairman, the new leader of this board of the fourth largest county in the country.
Yep.
But before we get into that, I guess I got to give you a couple seconds to brag about your Golden Domers.
Yes, yes.
Congratulations on Notre Dame. You got your law degree from there, so congratulations in order on their big football game.
That's right. Go
but I'm not going to
Irish.
let you filibuster about this, but I'll give you a minute on this, actually.
Let me gloat because the Irish have been through a lot.
They have so many bad. Nothing good has ever happened to the Notre Dame football team.
Well, not in a long time. Not a long time. And the big thing for us is to shut up the naysayers. So the greatest thing about sports is you do it on the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
Between the white lines, and they've done it now against Indiana, Georgia, and Penn State. And we'll see how Texas and Ohio State do tonight, but I'm just excited. And he's a great coach, and the program's in great shape. So all of us Notre Dame fans are really excited. Yeah.
That's an opinion. I'm joking. Congrats. I'm sure that was a lot of fun for you to watch the other night. And the reason, some of the reason I'm, bringing up the sports here and letting you talk a little bit about that. Sports was a big topic in your speech kicking off this new legislative supervisor board. You've got several new members on there, 3 new members.
Yep.
New chairman, you. And you gave a speech that touched on a lot of big issues, and a couple of those issues were very much sports related.
Yeah.
And, let's start with, you talked about baseball, you talked about hockey. Let's start with the hockey stuff because that got a lot of attention. You said you want to bring the NHL back to the Valley. You said that losing the Coyotes last year was a low point. You're going to change that. And you said you're going to put together an advisory committee to try to bring them back, and you've had discussions with Bettman, the commissioner of the NHL. Let's unpack some of that. Let's start with that committee. Who's on this committee? Who are you looking at? Who are you talking to?
Yeah.
What's the strategy here?
Yeah, and let's roll back because you did mention in my speech that I mentioned a lot of things. So for me, there's a lot of issues that we can really do great stuff here at Maricopa County. And I'll just give you the overview. It's economic development, water, transportation, housing, public safety, elections, and good government. And so when we're talking about hockey and we're talking about baseball, because it's important for me to know that we're really paying attention to the issue with the Diamondbacks and Chase Field, but these issues come down to economic development. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's not just about sports and saying, rah, rah, we're cheering for our team, which is, of course, it's great and it's fun. But professional sports is a huge economic driver for major metropolitan areas. And here in the Valley, of 4.5 million people, we have a larger population in this community than 25 states. And so it's huge. And the point I made the other day is that we have the best fans in the world here in the Valley. We do such a good job of putting on the Super Bowl, NASCAR, the Final Four. We have professional sports teams. But what I saw was just ridiculous ways that the Coyotes ended up leaving, partly because of the ownership and the leadership of the team. But also I thought the political structure wasn't doing the right job. And for me, the final straw was the state land auction when that fell apart 2 days before it was supposed to occur. Mm-hmm. And the process I describe as shambolic because I think it was embarrassing for all sides. And I just saw people just kind of shrug their shoulders and go, oh, well, they're gone. Well, I didn't like that.
Yeah.
That's a loss of jobs. That's a loss of money, secondary, tertiary inputs into our economy. And so I said, well, what can I do about it? I can't just complain about it. So I cold called Commissioner Gary Bettman.
A cold call just out of the blue.
Cold call, and it worked. And
he took your call.
And he took my call,
right.
And we've had several meetings. And I laid out the idea that I had, which is to put together a group of people, political, business, and sports leaders who understand how to do it the right way. You're asking me for specific names. We're not going to release the names right now because the committee's in formation. But I have a list of names of people that I'd like to approach, and I have approached, about putting this together. And this will be essentially a kitchen cabinet for me as an advisory committee. But for me to say to them, these are the two things I think that need to be identified after my discussions with Gary Bedman. One, identify an owner, and two, identify a location for a world-class facility. But if you go back to question number one, the owner has to be a billionaire with significant resources and deep pockets. There's not many of them in this planet. So that will be the challenge.
Yeah. So what's the likelihood of getting something like this done? I mean, it's not an easy thing to get a new or get a franchise here. What were your conversations with Bettman like? If you can give us some more specifics on those during that cold call.
Yeah. Well, we've had a few meetings, but we're both in alignment in agreeing that the Valley is just a tremendous place, right? We're one of the largest markets in North America, a market that's ideal for professional sports. And obviously, they were invested here for decades to make it work. And for whatever reason, the Coyotes were just kind of bounced around town. And so I said to him, I think everything that led to the Coyotes leaving was just a series of bad decisions and bad events and incompetence, just sheer incompetence. And so I said, let's not put the cart in front of the horse like the way that occurred with the state land auction. Let's have really good, smart people move in a methodical process, step by step, on the way it should be done. So if we get to the point where we have the owner and we have the location, we can go to the NHL and they go, okay, you guys are going to get the expansion team. Because that's what the NHL is looking at, is to expand to 2 more cities. And the other cities that I think that we're in competition with for an NHL franchise would probably be Houston and several other cities. So if you're the NHL, you want to be moving out west. You want to be looking at cities like Houston and here in the Valley.
And you mentioned there's not a lot of billionaires, so I'd imagine that the group, their first task is going to be identifying people who have the kind of money it takes to purchase a franchise and to move it here. Off the top of my head, I don't know that many billionaires. But I'm thinking there's one sports owner in town who's kind of new, just bought the Suns, Matt Ishbia. Is he somebody you've had any conversations with as somebody, who might be interested in doing something like that? Or
not directly, but I have to say that Matt Ishbia has been doing a tremendous job since he bought the Suns, right? This guy has done it the right way. He has shown the Valley how much he cares. He has shown the fans how much he cares. The team that he's assembled in the front office have been top-notch. They have been going out there in the community. I really like what the Suns did recently, a couple of weeks ago, when they announced that $2 family value meal for people to buy concessions. Because when you go to a professional sports games, it is expensive.
Yeah.
If dad wants to buy a beer and the kid wants to get a hot dog and then, the other one wants to get Cracker Jack, it adds up. So I think the Suns have shown that they really care about the fans and they want to have a really good fan experience. So someone like him would be terrific, but you have to have a billionaire and a potential owner who A, has interest in doing it, and B, has the financial wherewithal to make this work.
So you haven't had any conversations with him, or do you think you should be having conversations with him just to gauge his interest in something
My
like
priority
that?
right now is just putting together the best possible advisory team, to make sure that we're going to go about this the right way.
Okay. Yeah. And let's sticking with sports here too. And I know we'll get into some of the other issues you talked. Again, your speech made a lot of headlines beyond just some of the sports stuff here.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about the Diamondbacks. A lot of discussion. There's been a lot of friction between the county board and the Diamondbacks over Chase Field. If anybody who's not familiar, the county owns the field out there, the stadium out there. It is a county property, so basically the landlord's out there.
But the Diamondbacks run the stadium.
But they run the stadium.
They're responsible for the entirety of the stadium. And that is one thing that I have seen that a lot of people don't either know or don't realize. When they hear about the county and they hear about the Diamondbacks, they think that, it's on us to do various things around the stadium.
Yeah.
The Diamondbacks run the stadium, and that was part of the MOU that was after a lawsuit in 2018.
Yeah.
We're partners.
Yeah. So on the one hand, this is the broad view, the 20,000-foot level. Basically, the Diamondbacks want a big remodel to stay in Chase Field and whatnot. And so that's kind of where the issue is right now. And there's been talk that they couldn't move to a different place, stay in the Valley and move, or there had been, talk in prior years about them pulling up stakes and moving to other places. My question for you is, if it takes more taxpayer money on your part, on the part of the board, are you willing to pay more money to keep the Diamondbacks here? And let's start with where are you philosophically on this?
Yeah. Well, philosophically, I'm opposed to public subsidies
Mhm.
for private enterprise because I don't care if you're a professional sports team or if you're selling widgets or you're
Mhm.
selling cars. You have to have a really good, strong, compelling argument about why you should have access to governmental money. On the other hand, the county did build a stadium.
Mhm.
And it happened 30 years ago in the early 1990s. And the county owns the stadium, and we own the 25 acres that surround Chase Field. That is our property. And what I said in my speech on Monday when I was elected chairman is making sure that this is a taxpayer friendly resolution is my goal, which means this is my line in the sand. And so negotiations, of course, is an art, but I think the team needs to realize, and I think they do, that for us as a board of supervisors, we have considerations into making sure that we are taking care of taxpayer money. On the other hand, we want the Diamondbacks to stay, and we want them to stay at Chase Field. But Chase Field itself is 30 years old. So we also recognize that the team has come into a different era of how stadiums are utilized these days. It's not like the days when I grew up going to Shea Stadium and you just sit there and you grab grab a drink and then you're out of there. Shea Stadium, all the seats were very cramped. It was 55,000 people wedged in. Now stadiums need to be more experiential. People want and expect a lot more out of stadiums. And the other thing is the Diamondbacks control all non-baseball events. So if you're going to go to a rock concert, Kenny Chesney, Billy Joel, Stevie Nicks, right, or whatever favorite band that you have,
Mhm.
or a college bowl game, the D-backs are putting that on, which also means this is why they made the decision to install artificial turf. They got rid of natural grass because having that turf allows them to host these events throughout the year. And so these are all the things that have to be factored in when we negotiate with them.
Yeah, but if it comes down to it, are you willing to pony up more? I know you're philosophically opposed, but if that's what it takes, is it worth it from your perspective?
I don't think the county is in a position or inclined to do that. I think what is going to happen here is you're going to have the D-backs either looking with the city of Phoenix or go back to the state legislature. They've been running some legislation the last couple of years called these theme park districts.
Oh yeah,
And,
we're
you know,
familiar with it. Yeah,
Of course. And then the Cardinals have something already out there.
Mhm.
So it's up to the D-backs to find the political will and capital at the state level to see if they can get something, if that's what they're going to pursue, if that's what they want.
Yeah, because it seems like a pretty tough sell right now. I mean, we just got done talking about the Coyotes, and Tempe voters sent a very clear message about what they think about public resources being used for these public stadiums. They shot down pretty handily a proposal on the Coyotes for a multi-billion-dollar facility to keep the Coyotes here.
And the county has limited powers,
Yeah.
right? Look at Prop 479, the transportation bill last year. We couldn't refer that to the ballot ourselves. We had to go to the state capitol for it.
Yeah.
Right now, we have the jail excise tax, which we can get into later. Same
We
thing.
will.
That's going to have to go to the legislature. So the county has limited functions. So when you talk about is the county willing to spend public money, A, it's not, but B, it doesn't even have the ability to do it. Policy and state laws are written up at 1700 West Washington.
Yeah, and have you had any discussions with the Diamondbacks, either their executive staff or the owners, the Kendricks or anybody like that, since you've taken over this position as chairman of the board?
Yes. Negotiations / communication / input feedback has been constant.
And has it been? How would you describe that? Has it been positive with the D-backs? Has it been negative? How would you describe this?
I would consider it to be positive, professional, and fruitful.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. You can't give us anything more than that.
Well, we all have the same goal, right? We want to see a deal get done.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sure. I get that. I mean, it is essential. A lot of people believe to keep that facility in downtown Phoenix because it does anchor that area. Now, you'd mentioned something briefly there just a second ago about maybe they should partner with Phoenix. I mean, what would that look like, and what would that mean?
I don't know, but obviously it's located in Phoenix, and it's just such a unique line of business that the county's in that it doesn't want to be in is the line of holding a baseball stadium. But the city of Phoenix owns the Footprint Center, and they did a really good job 5 years ago when they renovated that arena because the city owns it. It's a city asset. but they worked with the Suns, and the Suns were under previous ownership, but the previous owner did a really good job of working with the city where they each ponied up half.
Yeah.
And so if the city's really good at that, they have a very robust economic development office over there who knows what they're doing. They have the convention center across the street. So I'm just saying that if the city of Phoenix was interested, they would have a lot of more tools at their disposal.
What would your voters think about that, voters who don't live in Phoenix? Because there's a lot of cities in Maricopa County, obviously, that aren't Phoenix, and they paid and built this stadium with their taxpayer dollars.
It's been paid off.
Yeah.
That stadium paid for itself, I think, even before the 1990s was over.
Okay.
And ever since then, the building has been generating revenue.
Okay, but it still was paid for by them, and how would they react to that if you were just to?
Well, once again, we would have
deal?
to and I'm just giving you theoretical options here, but if we struck a deal with the city, we would, of course, make sure that the county was left in the best position possible.
Okay. Another thing too, if we can move on to some more policy issue stuff, some other things you made some headlines about it, made a big deal about, and you mentioned the excise tax. I believe that's $200-300 million or something like that.
$300 million
dollars. The excise tax for the jails is set to expire. But through this quirky law, only Maricopa County needs the legislature to put a tax increase on the ballot. What's the conversations with legislative leaders been like? You think they're going to get that done, or are you going to think they're going to let this tax expire?
I'm very optimistic that the jail excise tax is going to end up on a ballot within the next year or two, and here's why. It's a public safety issue, and people understand and they get that implicitly. The jail excise tax was created in the 1990s in order for us to house the violent criminals that get prosecuted and convicted. So they got to be placed somewhere. What is great about this tax is it's so cheap. It's only 1/5 of a penny. That's it. And the county actually kicks in the other half because that tax doesn't take care of the entire operating budget for our jails. So the sales tax contributes half of the budget. Maricopa County kicks in the other half, and that's how we fund it. But what we did was, and I think it was really smart of the Board of Supervisors and my colleagues who left office, that we created a public citizen public safety funding committee. So the chairman of our committee was John Lewis, the former mayor of Gilbert. I got to appoint someone. I appointed Dan Butler, the assistant police chief for the Mesa Police Department. And my other colleagues appointed someone, the sheriff and the county attorney appointed someone. And they all worked together to craft this. So now it's being handed to legislative leadership. And we've had really good positive feedback from Speaker Montenegro and Senate President Peterson, and they understand the goal here. And I think the governor will as well. So it's a necessary heavy lift, but I'm optimistic that we're going to get there because I think it's incumbent upon us as Maricopa County to deliver that message to the legislature and the governor. But I think they're going to get it very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, and you probably need this tax to be put on the ballot and extended in order to accomplish some other parts of your agenda, because you spoke a lot about getting pay raises for detention officers, for sheriff's deputies, for non-sworn people in public safety. You know, you're facing shortages there in a lot. I believe it's over 800 detention officers. There's a shortage right now. It's 120 sworn officers. These are some big numbers. Why are these shortages happening? How come you can't get enough people?
Yeah, I can walk you through that. So for Maricopa County, fourth largest county in the country, half of our budget is dedicated to public safety. That's the prosecutors, that's the sheriff's office, that's the courts, the probation divisions. So that's huge. And we have a $4 billion budget. We're actually, Dennis, the second largest budget in Arizona after the state budget, the one signed by the governor and the legislature. But Maricopa County has a great fiscal record, as you know. We've cut property tax rates 4 years in a row. We cut the overall budget last year by 11%, but we have maintained our investment in public safety. When I meet with the sheriff, whoever the sheriff is, or the county attorney, I say, what are the resources that you need? And they tell us we need this, this, and that. But the thing that keeps me up at night is the condition in the state currently of the sheriff's office. And these vacancies is problematic. So in our sheriff deputies, we're at 15% vacancy. With detention officers, we're at 40% vacancy, and with dispatch, we're at 60% vacancy. The morale there is very low, and that's in conjunction with the federal oversight that we have hanging over our head.
And we'll get to that in
exactly,
a second.
But it's all tied together. And when I look around at the 27 law enforcement agencies here in the Valley, our pay structure is the lowest. And so it's been very hard to retain people, much less recruit them. And we're losing people through attrition because they're going to other agencies. So if you combine that with the federal oversight problems that we've had over the last 18 years, it's just a recipe for disaster. And what I would hate is for this department to get hollowed out because we have serious core functions here where we have to have people in these jails. Also to make sure that the people incarcerated are safe. Sheriff Sheridan has addressed this issue of people dying in the jails. So it's all tied together.
And if this tax doesn't get on the ballot and extended, these problems, what happens? What do you see happening?
It would be a disaster for Maricopa County, which is the reason why I'm optimistic it's going to get on the ballot and it's going to get passed.
Okay. And before we move on to the federal monitor here, just bigger picture thing, because again, through this weird, unique, I think we can call it a unique law because it only affects Maricopa County. Maricopa County needs the legislature to put these kinds of questions on the ballot. You going to try to repeal that? Can it be repealed? Because this seems kind of silly.
Yeah. My priority right now is to make sure that jail excise tax does get on the ballot, but that's a conversation I think we could have after that. But look, we went to Prop 479. And ironically, 2 years ago, we were calling it Prop 400, and it got vetoed by the previous governor. And that was devastating for Maricopa County, and that really set
Are you talking about the transportation tax?
Yes, the transportation tax, right? So we had the transportation tax. We had to go through that.
Ducey had vetoed that, the initial version.
And then it became Prop 479. But that was a heavy lift. And then, frankly, I think that was a tougher one than what we're going to see here with the jail excise tax.
Yeah.
But I didn't see anyone after that saying, hey, let's just go back and give Maricopa County the tools that they have, just like the other 14 counties. So there doesn't seem to be an appetite at the legislature or the governor's office to do that. But frankly, my question is, why do you guys want that? Because you have the responsibility of placing a tax on the ballot. And if you're a legislator from outside Maricopa County, you don't know Maricopa County as well as we do here at the Board of Supervisors. So why do you want to assume that responsibility? But that's a policy call at the state legislature.
Well, that's why I would think it'd be a high priority, because what the legislature has done is taken a significant amount of power from the board.
Yeah.
You know your voters better than somebody up in northern Arizona or outside of Maricopa County.
Yeah.
And they are not letting you exercise these types of tools.
Yeah.
And, voters are smart. If you're raising taxes, there's probably a reason for it. And if they don't like it, you're going to get voted out.
Yeah, and think about how much time they spent on Prop 479.
Yeah.
And they were fighting each other between the House, the Senate, and the ninth floor. All of them were elected to state office, I'm sure, with other priorities that they wanted to get done. But they spent a considerable amount of time on a county transportation road plan.
Yeah.
Leave that to the counties, and then you guys can tackle the other big stuff that you were elected to do. But it's on them.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like the legislature hates Maricopa County sometimes?
I mean, I don't. But if I was a state legislator, I would be like, why are we doing this? Let them have it so I can go and pursue the agenda that my voters put me here for. But I've never got the feeling from most of them that they hate Maricopa County. Some of them
For most of them.
Some of them do.
Care to name names?
No, but I think you know who they are.
I want names. I think I can. I think I got an idea about who you're talking about here. Now, you'd mentioned the federal overseer over the sheriff's office, and that was put in for very good reasons.
Right.
This was, during the Arpaio administration, egregious cases of racial profiling, violation of civil rights, these types of issues. You said that you it's time to get out from underneath that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So the lawsuit was filed in 2007. The things that were happening at the sheriff's office were not good. This included unlawful stops of Latinos with traffic stops. So,
and you have a Latino background. Just for people who aren't familiar with you.
My mother's an immigrant from Honduras.
Yeah.
All of my maternal relatives still live in Honduras, and I'm proud that I am the first Latino chairman ever of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. So this is a very sensitive issue for me because I certainly saw firsthand what my mother had to deal with as an immigrant from Central America.
Yeah, and as we continue this conversation, I just wanted to make sure people are aware of that kind of context with you. So,
and so I am positive that the sheriff's office, and I know this for a fact, no longer has policies or procedures or any support for unlawful traffic stop in a racial discriminatory basis. But what I have seen from that 2007 lawsuit is that the case has gravitated to different issues. So now the sheriff's office has to comply with the third order and the fourth order from this lawsuit. And that's emanating from the original case, but it's completely different. And so now it's subjected to all these different compliance measures, and the compliance goalposts keep changing. For example, I'm going to give you an example, and there are many. But right now, when a sheriff deputy does a traffic stop, they have to fill out paperwork on 13 different categories. Sheriff's office has to be in compliance on 94% of each of those 13 categories. Well, right now, the sheriff's office is at 100% compliance on 12 categories, but 89% on the 13th category, which means it's not in compliance. And it has to show that for 3 years. So it's become a huge financial burden on the county and the sheriff's office, and has cost us $300 million and running in 15 years, which prevents us from sending assets to catch drug smugglers, to catch human traffickers, to catch the bad guys that are spreading drugs to our kids, and for us to invest in salaries for these people that work there.
Interesting timing, though, for you to be making this part of your agenda. Like it or not, I mean, you know, the voters sent Jerry Sheridan to and elected him sheriff. He was Joe Arpaio's right-hand man.
Yeah.
Don't you think this makes it more difficult to get out from underneath the federal monitor when the guy who was responsible for this monitor being in here in the first place, that his right-hand man was just elected and is taking over?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because every election over the last 12, 16 years, the voters have decided who's going to run the sheriff's office. And someone did run against Joe Arpaio and beat him, Paul Penzone. And Paul Penzone ran that office for 7 years. And you would think, after the voters have decided we want Arpaio out and we want this guy in, that the judge would say, okay, the people have said we don't like that guy. That's how we work in a constitutional republic, right? With our democratic system. But Paul Penzone himself was found in contempt in court twice. And he had eliminated all of these policies and procedures that everyone felt were controversial. Then we had Russ Skinner for the past year, who did a tremendous job of helping the sheriff's office catch up on the backlog of all these reporting that they had issues with the judge. And now you have Jerry Sheridan. But Jerry Sheridan is not Joe Arpaio. Jerry Sheridan is Jerry Sheridan. And he campaigned by saying, I'm not Joe Arpaio. He campaigned with his own message and his own philosophy of how he thinks the sheriff's office should be run.
To a point, because he's also said he wants to bring back some of Arpaio's policies. To be fair,
but he didn't say he was
going
to bring back the policies that were found to be unconstitutional or illegal or discriminatory.
Of course, he wouldn't say that. He wouldn't.
I don't think he will, Dennis.
We're going to bring back a policy of civil rights violations. Nobody's going to say that. But he did say, he did policies. The one I'm thinking about is Tent City. And other policies like that. And so I'm wondering if this makes it a little bit... I think the tent city that we associate with Joe Arpaio is different than the idea that Jerry Sheridan is advancing in terms of moving away nonviolent offenders to a different spot where they're actually going to probably be better off. And I think he's entitled to make that policy argument, and the board will listen to him for it. Yeah. But my point is that the judge should see that we're now in our fourth sheriff since his lawsuit was filed. The current compliance orders that are now presenting considerable pain elements to the department are not related to where the case started. All right. And getting a little bit long on time here, I did want to hit up, because this is a very personal issue for you, is elections.
Yeah.
You've got, what is it, the 95-1 plan is what you're pushing for with election reform here.
Yeah.
And if you're not familiar with Mr. Galvin's history, you were on the board there throughout most of the controversies that have been surrounding the election, where the legislature nearly voted to arrest you guys over trumped up accusations of voter fraud and things like that. It was, a tough time for the board and everything like that. So what is this plan, this 95-1 plan? A lot of it is focusing on, you've got an audit that you want to do of the election system.
I'm not calling it an audit, but we can
an examination. I'm sure the any company that gets hired to do this examination will not have the word ninja in it.
No, no.
But there's part of that. You want to look at the system to see where it could be improved, and you also want to speed up the vote tally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as a conservative Republican who has stood up for truth in elections in terms of I have defended how elections have been conducted and the results of those elections. You've never heard me say that 2020 or 2022 were stolen. And so I think I have credibility there, right?
Mhm.
But I do believe that we have a good system, but you always should be looking to make a good system better. And first of all, I think Maricopa County should find ways to do its system better. But also, I have found and identified state laws that I think are problematic for us, and I'm going to start there.
Okay.
So after Election Day, Maricopa County and the other counties in Arizona were still counting votes 10 days after the election. And what happens is people start to freak out. Within about 48 hours, I have seen. By Thursday of election week, Dennis, people really start to go nuts. And so I have seen it's considerable strain on our election workers and our election volunteers. And I was seeing in our second week into it that people were calling in sick. People were kind of falling by the wayside, which actually impacts the effectiveness of counting votes. But what I also saw were pundits and business leaders around the country saying, well, why is Arizona taking so long? Why are they so slow? We're not slow. It's our policy. And so I'm saying that we can shift the way that voters behave. We're not going to be disenfranchising folks. I want to get ahead of that one as well, because I have an idea that if you open up in-person voting on Saturday and Monday before Election Day, when we can tabulate results in real time, you're actually improving access to voting.
Mm-hmm.
So when Governor Hobbs and Secretary of State Fontes, as much as I respect their opinion on elections, say that these ideas would disenfranchise folks, I completely disagree with them.
Yeah, I think some of that has to do with some of the ID requirements and stuff like that. But that would be a more of a discussion for them. I'm just curious as to what needs to be reviewed with the system. I mean, for the past 4 years, the election system in Maricopa County has been gone through with more than a fine-tooth comb. It has been picked over and looked at and examined. You had the cyber ninja audit, that surprise came up and said, basically validated most of the results. But it's been looked at and poked and prodded. What could a more reputable firm come in and find?
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to show people is that we're going to be prospective and not retrospective.
Okay.
So this is not about auditing results. This is not about seeing who won a certain election or not. This is about making sure that as we go forward, we're going to be working at optimum quality. And one of the big things that we're doing that I'm very proud of that hasn't really gotten out there is that we're building a brand new elections facility that's going to be open up in time for the 2028 election. So part of this comprehensive review, and that's what I'm calling it, is that I want our independent consultants to show us how we can best utilize our new facilities, larger rooms, more employees, be able to count votes faster.
And again, there's the 95-1 plan out there with the elections. You're going to need help from the state legislature.
Mm-hmm.
There is a bill, Warren Peterson has introduced a bill that would ostensibly speed up the vote tally.
Yep.
Have you had conversations with Mr. Peterson about this? Are you supportive of this measure?
Yeah, the day after the Maricopa County certified the elections, I came out with that plan that I call 95-1, which is 95% of votes tabulated by election night. And the big thing for me is a cutoff date for when late early ballots are dropped off. We had 350,000 ballots dropped off on election day. These were mail-in ballots. That's why it takes such a long time to count those ballots. If we're able to cut them off the week before, that would do a great job in helping us get votes tabulated earlier. So I immediately spoke with Senate President Warren Peterson. I spoke with other legislators, including Matt Gress, and they all love the idea. And now Peterson has a bill, which I think has a lot of great stuff in it, but also stuff that we can all negotiate on and work with. But this is what we need. I think the voters want this. They want us to tackle things in good faith, but to do it in a way to improve the system.
All right. I think we're going to have to end it there. We're like way over time here at this
There's
point.
so much going on.
Always such a great
County.
Conversation having with you. And again, you made a lot of news. I don't remember a county chairman's speech like that, making that kind of news. So it was been pretty interesting. And we had gotten away a little bit from this, but I do like asking some of my guests a softer question and just usually about movies or books or culture, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So what was the last record song you were listening to in your car heading over here or otherwise?
I was just listening to Pearl Jam's 10 album on the way over here. I am your typical Gen X guy who grew up with grunge, and I had that, and it's either that or Biggie and Tupac. So one or the other. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I didn't have you for a Biggie or Tupac guy.
Huge. Yeah. And we could go deep into hip hop, but Mobb Deep, Run DMC, De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest, all those guys.
All right.
I love that era of hip hop.
That's amazing. That's great. Yeah, we should talk about it. I could tell you all about the time I went to the Public Enemy show.
There you go.
At the old Electric Ballroom, which was after the Gold Rush. Anyway, that's a long time ago, and we don't want to bore our listeners with that kind of stuff. So anyway, thank you very much for stopping by here. And, Colin and I will be chatting a little bit about your Notre Dame Irish here in the back half of this this pod. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the second half of the Politics Unplugged podcast, joined as always, producer extraordinaire Colin Stanton. Colin, how the hell are you?
I'm good. Always a pleasure. Good to be here.
So thought that was a pretty good interview with Mr. Galvin.
Yes.
Made a whole lot of headlines. I can't remember a chairman ever coming out with a speech like that.
Yeah, that was the most high-profile job. As a sports fan, love what he's doing to try and get a hockey team back.
Yeah.
That's terrific. I hope it works. I know he can't get into the specifics. It seems like the easiest path from the outside would be getting Ishbia involved.
Go talk to Matt.
And at some point, I assume Ishbia is probably going to want a new arena.
Yeah.
And if you can get him to build it with hockey in mind, I mean, whether he's interested, I have no idea.
Yeah, and hey, man, before we get on to the some of the other topics here, man, I don't know what I was expecting. I was a little surprised though. He went with Pearl Jam with his musical taste, right? And Biggie Tupac. I wouldn't know what to expect from him, but like but it was a little surprised, a little edgier.
Yes, no, he's a conservative Republican into Biggie and Tupac.
Yeah,
it happens.
I mean, that doesn't mean I didn't expect him to say, well, of course, Nickelback.
Yeah, no,
no. I didn't know what I expected, but it's like, oh, okay, all right. I got you.
Solid answer.
Now, I would have been blown away if he says, like, well, I was listening to Slayer on the way over here.
Yeah, that would have been a solid surprise.
That would have been.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
That didn't happen. Someday, Colin, we'll get a politician in here. Be like, yeah, I got to tell you, man, Slayer's Rain in Blood is my favorite record of all time.
Wendy Rogers, maybe.
Yeah. Why is that? The lyrics, man. The lyrics.
Yeah. Yeah, we're still waiting on that. No, he was terrific. It was a good interview.
It was. He has certainly put out a big agenda. And I think with some of the sports stuff that he's put out there, it's kind of interesting because he gets a lot of media attention on there, and it's no real loss there if something like that doesn't come together.
Yeah.
It's not like people are going to be back 4 years like, you promised us a hockey team. Where is that?
No.
There
are a lot of moving parts there. It's just good to have someone on this end who wants to make it happen and is working to get something done there.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, we thank him again for coming on the show and not filibustering about Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Always appreciate that. But as far as politics this week, man, a lot of stuff going on. I mean, obviously, we're recording this like right after the sentencing for Trump just happened.
Yeah.
I don't think people need me or you to be weighing in on that. No, because there's no surprise there.
No, what are they going to do? Put him in jail for 10 days?
Yeah,
and then let him out for the inauguration? we kind of knew where this was going. Yeah,
we'll let other pundits bloviate about all of that, but
I suspect they will.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it seems to me like the big story of the week's also just turned really political too. Is those horrific fires in L.A. and regular listeners of the show know that's from your neck of the woods, SoCal.
Yeah,
it's not where you grew up or
right.
anything
I'm
like
from
that.
Orange County, but spent a lot of time. I pass through Malibu all the time.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. It's terrible. I mean, for a while, there's an evacuation that was down to Hollywood Boulevard. I mean, that's insane.
That is insane. I mean, that's the tourist area.
Yeah.
And I thought,
yeah, like I'm a regular at Amoeba Records, and that was the cutoff. That was like across the street from Amoeba, you were evacuated.
Yeah, that's just insane. Because most people, if you've been in Phoenix long enough, like you've probably either came from that area and spent time there, or you visited, so you know those areas pretty well. I thought it was pretty interesting. I saw a map on CNN put together this map, and one of their talent, they were describing everything. It did really well because he pointed out, like, this is all the tourist stuff. This is where Universal Studios, the Hollywood Bowl. This is all the stuff like you probably go to see, and this is where in relation to the fires. And it's like, wow, man, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, fire burning not too far from the Hollywood sign for a while.
Yeah.
And the shots that just stagger me are the ones driving down PCH, and all of the houses on the beach side are gone. And I would not have thought that was possible.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. It's just, if you're unfamiliar with that area of Malibu, PCH is, I mean, we're talking like 5-lane highway that runs through, and on one side of it, right up to the road, there are houses that are beachfront.
Mm-hmm.
And they all burned, which means the fires were burning through buildings, because it's not like it's forest on the other side, it's buildings.
Yeah.
And they're building through that, jumping the 5-lane highway and catching these other buildings on fire, and they're all gone. And it's staggering to look at.
It's the winds. I mean, like that's how strong the winds were for that fire to jump, with you carrying those embers over and burning everything down. It is just absolutely heartbreaking, and the stories that are coming out are absolutely incredible and sad. If you are looking for, I guess, a moment of levity, in this terrible tragedy, there was a funny moment. I saw somebody was, interviewing one of the, people who were dealing with all this stuff. And at the end, the guy's explaining what needs to be done, what he's been doing, is what he's gone through. And at the end of the interview, the reporter asked him, "Who are you again?" And he's like, "Steve Gutenberg."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, do you live here?
We have a generation of reporters who never saw Police Academy.
I was like, oh my Lord.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a moment of levity, again, in a really horrific situation.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, the fires weren't far from the Hollywood sign, but, of course, politics isn't far from anything these days, and it's just already been turned a little bit or a lot political, as people are looking to blame this on people.
And it's infuriating. The takes on social media or from even some politicians on the right have just been disgusting and stupid.
Mm-hmm.
They on Twitter, they were taking off with blaming DEI in the fire department.
Yeah.
Like, hey, stop with the DEI code word. We know what you mean when you say DEI.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the nerve to say, well, the problem is black firefighters, then just shut up, because it's a stupid take, and saying it's DEI, that's what you're saying, and it's moronic.
Yeah.
So knock it off. And then the other people are attacking the mayor, and so the attacks are.
Oh, that was an absurd attack at the airport on her.
Like, there was a Sky News, which is Fox in Europe, Sky News reporter going after her
because she was
demanding an apology to the people of Los Angeles, because she was in Africa on a presidential delegation when the fires broke out. Apparently, she was supposed to know the fires were coming.
Mm-hmm.
When the fires broke out, she flew home. Accusing her of cutting the budget for the fire department, which is not true. They keep reporting on social media and other places, she cut the budget by $23 million. No, they were in the middle of a negotiation, and so that's in the budget, and there was a separate fund. The year to year, it increased $50 million.
Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, the fires are in L.A. County.
Not L.A.
Not L.A. for the most part. So it's a tangential thing anyway. That's not the same money.
Yeah, and some comments were made during that. I mean, they were ridiculous questions. You want to, because as you pointed out, there's no way anybody could have known that these fires, an act of nature, was going to happen.
There was a forecast that certainly showed you that this sort of thing was possible, but that happens.
Yeah,
I mean, we're in a time where that area gets no rain.
Yeah.
It's a drought, and the Santa Ana winds come in, and it's devastating.
Yeah. There was some comments made, like we were watching this, and somebody had mentioned that how she should have said something. I mean, I don't know what she could have
I don't
said.
know. What do you say to a Sky News reporter who's saying that Elon Musk says you're an embarrassment? What do you think?
Yeah, like why?
Who gives a shit what Elon Musk thinks about anything?
Yeah, why answer?
Yeah.
Because you're in this age now, if you say anything, how's this going to be used against you like this? So like some just rando guy comes up and starts spouting. I mean, if he came up and started asking informed questions,
yes,
maybe you might have gotten, maybe you would have gotten a few freaking answers.
Yes. But the questions are all stupid. The other big attack is on the water supply and some argument that they could have had a system to bring water down from the north, but they didn't, and that's what's to blame here. And the water supply is not a problem. The reservoirs are high right now. They've got a decent water supply. The issue is a fire hydrant is designed to help firefighters put out a house that's on fire. The fire hydrant system is not designed to put out a city that's on fire. When you have 20 houses that are on fire in one neighborhood, the hydrants can't keep up with that. There's no pressure. That's not because there's no water. It's because you can't do that. And there is no system designed to put out a city that's burning down.
Yeah.
And again, the problem here is we had 100-mile-an-hour winds in an area that's hit by a drought.
Yeah, and they're still trying to figure out how it started. And yet the blame fucking game has already started.
Yes.
Like before we even know how the fire started, we're already blaming people.
Yes. And there are a million ways they can start.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the power company, whether through negligence or just the fact that at 100-mile-an-hour winds, the power lines are going to go down. So unless they bury them underground, you're going to run into these issues with power lines. One spark, and when it's 100-mile-an-hour wind and everything's dried, everything's gone in minutes.
Yeah, instead of like figuring out the blame, like I think the focus should be on extinguishing these fires, getting them under control, caring for the safety and well-being of the people affected. That should be the priority.
Yeah.
But again, people are looking for, to make this political, looking for this to blame. And of course, that also means you have to go after the media. We saw Megyn Kelly go off on a rant the other day on the main anchor for ABC News, who had used some clothespins to cinch up his fire suit.
Yeah.
And it was a whole rant. I don't know if you'd seen this, but he was, doing his live hit and turns and points to the fire, and you could see some clothespins in the back cinching up to make his, his fire suit fit well.
Yeah.
I mean, you're wasting your fucking time on this?
Yeah, I know.
And people were writing stories about this.
Yeah.
About he's being eviscerated on social media. There's no story. Who gives a shit?
He's a TV anchor. The way your appearance matters.
It does matter.
And anyone, I've been on a fire line. I've covered stories where I had to put on a fire suit. You look like an asshole in a fire suit for the most. I mean, if you're got an axe and you're out there putting stuff out, then you look fine.
Yeah.
If you're standing doing work like TV work, wearing the suit, they tend not to fit very well. They're uncomfortable as hell. They're big and baggy.
Yeah.
And he's a news anchor on the network and doesn't necessarily want to look like he's wearing this hideous yellow tent.
Yeah, because anybody who's worked in TV will tell you if your hair's messed up or weird or like your tie is askew, like that's the thing you get the emails on.
Yeah. Yes.
And like David Muir, I don't know him. Maybe he's a raging narcissist or not. But like, why are you spending time on this?
Yes. And I mean, 50-50 shot, he had nothing to do with it. 50-50 shot, there's someone there whose job is to make him look good, who's pinning this stuff on, and he's just trying to do his job.
It's the dumbest.
You're really making Kelly's vet is useless.
I know. It just brings out the idiocy of people, man.
And people, one of the Fox blondes mocking someone for a focus on appearance. I mean, come on.
And this horrific tragedy and like, focusing on appearance when Megan, follow your own advice. Why don't you focus on the tragedy?
Yeah.
Again, like focus on what's happening there.
Yes.
Because we're getting a lot of headlines about celebrities who lost their home, and it is tragic for them. They're human beings too, but there's a lot of just average working everyday people that are also
Yes.
horrifically hit by this.
Yes.
And it's going to take a lot to rebuild, and the effects of this is going to be decades, if not decades, the effects are going to be. I mean, in the ramifications of all this with insurance prices and I mean, everything from just rebuilding to that kind of stuff.
Yes. And yes, there a lot of people are making a big deal about how it's rich people in Pacific Palisades and Malibu. And yeah, if you had, people like David Geffen live in those waterfront houses in Malibu, he'll survive this financially. He's also lost everything. But the fires are all over, and you go into Altadena, and there are a lot of like working class black families in Altadena who just lost their house and will be facing a horrific struggle to rebuild what they had built there in a very, very nice area. And you're also going to have the run-on of, with so many houses lost, all of the homes in more working class areas surrounding it are going to be in massive demand, and you're going to have that roll-on effect of other communities taking, big financial hits, or the families there taking financial hits, because of the damage nearby.
Yeah, and what it does to property values after this. There's been a lot of research after, like in Northern California, after these fires go through, and how it dwindles the housing stock, increasing housing prices to go up, making it even harder to get by and to afford a life in some of these areas. So I just really, Detroit, I guess, I don't know what else to say. Thoughts and prayers for everybody out there. I really hope they can rebuild and move on from this. And I'm sure they will, but it's going to take a long time.
Yeah. I mean, the initial estimates I saw, and this was shortly after it broke out, there were insurance estimates. There were 57 to 59 billion, and it's gotten way worse since then.
Yeah. It's just absolutely.
So, yeah.
Good God. I mean, 100 years from now, kids will be reading about this in history books, just like we read about the cow that started the Great Chicago Fire. I mean, like these kinds of things, So anyway, we positive vibes out for people out there to get these fires under control and to build back and get beyond this. That said, let's pivot to one of our favorite topics, which is obviously sports. Mr. Galvin spent a lot of time with that. I really do appreciate the fact that he did not filibuster about his Notre Dame football team now going to the college football finals. Although I do have to say I'm very pleased that they they beat barely the Penn State, which is probably my least favorite college team.
Yeah, it would be right up there. Yeah, I mean, we're left with 4 teams that I don't.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'm sort of happy, I guess, that there will be a team in the championship game that wasn't beaten by my school this year.
There you go, man.
Because I was looking at the possibility of a national title game between Penn State and Ohio State, who both lost to Oregon this year. Yeah. I don't like the playoff. I didn't like the playoff this year, last year, anytime. I don't like. I think the idea is foolish.
Yeah.
I think we're kidding ourselves, and it's just creating programming. And
I just have had a problem. There's been 2 good games with this playoff system.
Yes.
The one with the Penn State Notre Dame was very competitive, went down to the last second. Obviously, the heartbreaker for ASU losing to
the
Texas.
ASU game was a great game.
It was all-timer great game. That was amazing. I don't like the format, the way it's played. I know, and again, I think we touched on this last week or whatnot. They need to just blow up the bowl system, because one of the things I don't like is all these neutral sites. A big part of college football is the atmosphere on campuses, not the goddamn Orange Bowl.
Yeah.
It
won't happen.
No, it won't happen. But it's just it's just weird. You're asking fan bases to travel that much.
Yes.
And you're just losing something. And it has that real kind of corporate, sterile feeling to it. At least that's what I'm getting off of the TV.
Yeah. And it's a lot to ask the fan bases to travel when, if your team wins, they've got another couple games that you would have to travel to.
And like in the big picture too, I mean, like most of these are state schools. I mean, Notre Dame's not, but a lot of these are state schools. They're publicly funded universities, and now you're asking them to go fucking travel all across the country.
Yes.
And screw that, man. Just play the playoff games, a majority of them, on the campuses, and let's get rid of the bowl stuff. Anyway, We also wanted to talk a little bit about the Suns.
Yeah. Who won last night? Eked one out against the Hawks.
Yeah, they almost snatched defeat from the jaws of victory last
It
night.
was looking a little iffy there at times.
It did.
They looked energized. They looked better than they looked the last few times I've seen them. So hopefully they keep that up. It was not a great performance, but they won. Like, I'm only going to set the bar so high at this point.
And what is it with this team? I mean, like it's just like it's one of the big disappointments. I can't remember a team Suns team that I disliked watching more than this one.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot. I mean, there were some bad teams for almost a decade in the Suns, but there's something about this because the expectations met with what is perceived to be like lack of energy, lack of passion with this team.
I think there are a few things. I think one of them is they don't seem to play with a lot of passion. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know. But your two main guys, Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, are not demonstratively emotional guys. They're both terrific players. They're just not the most hardcore rah-rah people in the world. I don't know if that gives you a false sense of what the team is like, or if that approach rubs off on other teams, on the others on the team, and it's just sort of a passionless dream. But it sometimes seems like you're watching a bunch of guys who don't care about the game as much as you do.
It's like they're too cool to be, loud and passionate,
Yeah. And they just haven't looked good. They've looked disjointed. The big three does not work together. They've moved Beal to the bench.
Well, the first couple of weeks of the season they look great.
They look great. And then the injury started, and they look terrible. And part of the problem has been if they don't have all three of them, they get their asses kicked. And that shouldn't be the case. I mean, they've got sort of a depth issue, but it's not that their depth isn't that bad.
Yeah.
They should be better with 2 out of the 3, and they're not. And we've been hearing about Jimmy Butler for a couple weeks now.
Stop
and
with the Jimmy Butler.
And I keep seeing like people nationally acting like it's a foregone conclusion that he ends up here. And like the path to getting Jimmy Butler here may be impossible. It's the only way you do it is you trade Bradley Beal, who has a no-trade clause.
Yeah.
And Miami doesn't want him.
No.
So it means you find a third team that wants him and is willing to ship stuff to Miami to make it worth Miami's while that Beal will agree to go to. And I don't think that exists. I mean, it might. Maybe they can figure something out. And people have taken his benching as a sign that they're trying to get him unhappy to get him to leave. And I don't know if that's going to work. I mean, if you look at the teams that have like contract wiggle room who could probably help, like the Detroit Pistons. I mean, if you're Bradley Beal, are you waiving your no trade to go to the Pistons?
I really hope it turns into like the episode of Seinfeld with Costanza who refused to leave.
And and in Beal's defense, it's not like he's playing that poorly, and he seems like he's got a great attitude. Seems like a good guy. I haven't heard anything.
He seems like a really great guy.
Yes.
And
so to hinge all this on trying to get Beal up out of here when the Heat doesn't want him. I mean, and Beal has, after this season, has 2 more years on his contract. The second one topping out at $57 million. The Heat doesn't want to do that.
Nope. The old saying goes, you are what you can negotiate for yourself.
Yeah.
That's what your worth is.
Yeah. He's done a wonderful job of negotiating for himself.
Great job, man. And to place so much blame on him is just unfair.
Yeah.
I think. And again, sports fans, us included, aren't the most rational people. And when you start talking about being rational, just throw that out the window. I mean, Jimmy Butler's not going to come here. Let's say you could get a deal to get him here.
Yeah.
Well, then you get what? A 35, 36-year-old guy who wants max pay.
Yes.
And an extended contract.
Yeah, it's like a $121 million extension, which reports have said the Suns are willing to do, which, I mean, okay, whatever. But I just don't see how you get him here. I don't. Most of the deals that you can line up that would get him here, I look at it from the Heat perspective, and like they would literally rather let Butler walk for nothing than to take in an extra 2 years on a max deal of a guy that they don't necessarily want.
I'm just now horrified now because of our history of bad sport take predictions.
I know. By the time this drops, Butler will be suiting up on Sunday.
Butler's starting on Sunday.
I mean, and maybe they get it done. I don't know. I've been wrong about this stuff before, but the way everything is structured, the only way the Suns can do this is to trade one of the big three, and it's not going to be Booker, and it's not going to be Durant.
Yeah.
It's Beal, and Beal has a no-trade clause, and the Heat doesn't want him. Those are fairly significant stumbling blocks.
Come on. We'll throw in a Plumlee. Throw in a Plumlee.
And we can't.
Oh, it's right.
You're not allowed to aggregate
second
apron.
At
the apron there. And so, yeah.
Oh, good God. I think it was Brian Windhorst. I think he was saying something basically the other day, like, yeah, Suns are fucked.
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to them. And the thing is, though, they've got the talent.
Yeah.
They seriously got championship talent on that team.
You should be able to make a run. I mean, I don't think they
could turn it around.
The Thunder and the Cavs and the Celtics all look fantastic.
No, and not in a 7-game series.
It would take a gigantic turnaround. But you look at the roster, and it's a good roster. They've got and beyond the big three, there are not a lot of headline names, but they've got some good guys. Ryan Dunn, the rookie's playing really well. Grayson Allen playing very well. Iguodaro coming off the bench as a rookie is looking great. You've got the pieces there.
Enjoy the draft picks while you can, because the Suns don't have many of them.
Yeah, when they talk about what they have to offer in the trade, it's a first-round pick in 2031. Also, I didn't see this getting a lot of notice, but Yusuf Nurkic took a did not play coach's decision last night. So he fell out of the starting lineup all the way to like sitting next to Bol at the end of the bench, and they won.
Well, it's funny though. It was funny because like he came from Portland, right?
Yeah.
And you watch a lot of NBA, and you've watched a lot of Portland.
Watched a lot of Portland, yeah.
Watched a lot of Portland, and you were kind of warning me about this when he first was like, oh well,
they're good. They're good. Can't shoot from around the rim. He sometimes appears befuddled on defense. He's tall.
He's perplexed.
Yeah, I mean they got rid of DeAndre Ayton. They got Grayson Allen as part of that trade.
That's worked. That part of it's worked out. Grayson Allen's played very well. DeAndre Ayton has not done well.
Yeah. They also got Nasir Little, and people at the time were talking about how that was a good pickup. He was a good solid rotation guy. You know where Nasir Little's playing right now?
Don't tell me.
The Sioux Falls Skyforce. They were just in town playing the Valley Suns.
Sioux Falls, Iowa?
Yeah. They're the Heat. The Heat's G League team is the Sioux Falls Skyforce.
Skyforce.
By the way, let me just put in a good word for the G League team. Those games are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The Valley Suns at Mullet Arena, it's a good time. Tickets aren't that expensive. These guys can play.
Yeah.
Like they're legitimate players there. Games are a good time.
Oh. Well, I mean, yeah, I always encourage people, go out to fall ball here and see stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like, those are great. I'll have to follow up on your recommendation. Go check that out.
Yeah.
With that, but should probably be wrapping up here. I think this pod is like way over.
Yeah, probably a little bit.
Way over time. But before we leave, your reaction to the Carter funeral? How awkward were some of those moments?
Yeah,
I just was like, boy, that was awkward watching Trump shake hands with Pence.
Yeah, Mike Pence may have, been willing to set aside the fact that Trump kind of seemed to try and get him killed January 6th. I don't think Mrs. Pence has put that behind her.
That was just so awkward.
She didn't seem happy.
It was all just so weird seeing all the former presidents there. It was like George W. Like, you know, and there's Barack Obama sans Michelle.
Yeah,
who was there just
who
chatting,
ends up sitting next to Trump,
just chatting Trump up.
It reminded.
I mean, were they talking about birth certificates? I mean, what the fuck? I mean, it was just weird.
I don't know what those two have to talk about.
The whole thing was just weird.
Yes. And it always seems to go this way. And we haven't had that many of these lately. I mean, we had, Bush,
Senior.
Bush Senior.
W.
Yes. But I kept flashing back, and this is a long time ago, but it was the Nixon funeral, where if you watched the funeral, you kept going, oh my God, there were these guys that you remember from the era, or, for a lot of people just know about through history, because, I was a little kid when Nixon left, that just sort of disappeared. And then at the funeral, you're like, my God, that's Spiro Agnew. No one had seen Spiro Agnew in like decades. There he is, looking great, tan, healthy.
Well, I mean, the other weird thing was because Carter had lived so long, it's hard to find people who covered him.
Yes.
Like, look, if you were covering the White House at 25 years old, you're 70 today because he left in 1980. It's been 45 years.
Yeah.
You're 70 years old now. And,
That's why
and guess what? Back then, you weren't covering the White House at 25 years old.
No, you were not.
And it's not like today.
No. I mean, that's why CBS brought in Bob Schieffer.
Yeah, it was just
help with the coverage.
And that's what made me thinking about it. It's like, oh, well, you're like, there's
Yeah.
just not a lot of people around anymore.
Yeah.
Like one of the guy from New York Times who helped got a byline on the Carter obit.
Died in 2017, I think.
God.
He's been dead for like 7 years. When the obit he wrote finally runs.
Well played, Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
Well played, man. Long life.
Long life.
I mean,
tremendous career post politics.
Yeah.
And gets more shit than he deserves for his time as president.
Yeah, probably. I mean, yeah, because my thoughts on presidents and their responsibility for economies.
Yeah. He was there at a bad time, had a lot stacked against him. Doesn't make him a great president. He wasn't as bad as people make him out to be.
And that's usually the case with a lot of folks, but but be that as it may, man.
Yeah.
As always, great chatting with you.
Yep.
And thanks again to Thomas Galvin for stopping by here.
Yes.
And, see you next week.
Yeah, see you in a week.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.